I met Russell a couple of years ago now. It must have been a couple of years ago. We're entering our third season here. And it was actually at a field day. I came here and saw a huge manure pile, which was basically this stuff here, which is straw and manure mix. And I thought that it'd be an ideal place to put our microbes on, because after talking to him, he was putting this on as the crops that needed a bit of oomph, so it was mainly on maize, wasn't it? Yeah. And so we got a bit of product out here and we put it over the stack, and it instantly dropped quite substantially, didn't it? And that was due to the fact that it's obviously working like a compost. It was decomposing, and by adding the microbes onto it, suddenly they got a food source and they started to eat it. But we got a good result when we put it into the field, because with the added microbes, it breaks it down really quickly in the soil, and so you get a good response on the crop. But what we're doing here is we've decided to try a different tact, and this has coincided with Rick, who's started at Biophos and Soil Matters, who's come out from Holland and has some experience with our product over in Holland. And what they do is they do a system called bokashi, and that's fermenting organic matter rather than a compost, which is more of a decomposition process. So with what we're trying to do here is we're trying to allow the materials to ferment, and to do that we need to cover it, so we need to keep it airtight, which is what the lime's doing. So the lime is creating a film over top of it that doesn't allow the oxygen to get in. In theory, doesn't allow the oxygen to get in and start that decomposition process. And the microbes are being put onto the into the product through the animals. So Russell's feeding the animals EM over top of their diet. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we just every morning we make up a mix for the cattle out here and one for the deer. And I just pour a litre of the EM in that big drum there just over the balers every day. So hopefully it's coming through.
Yeah, that's the theory. So what we usually do with the bokashi is we get a set amount of organic matter. We get a balance of carbon, nitrogen, similar to compost, and mix it up with EM. But we've gone on a bit of a leap here with putting the EM onto the feed. So putting it through the animal and hoping that we get a similar result in here. But we came out a couple of weeks ago and we wanted to have a look and see how it was performing. And a key indicator that bokashi's working is that the temperature remains at a low level. So when fermentation is happening, it's done at a lower temperature than, say, a compost. The compost can be up 50, 60, 70 degrees, whereas fermentation is much more around 15 to 30. So we came out and we checked the temperature, and at one end Russell had an open pile where just had the manure stack, and we put the temperature gauge in there, and it was 70 degrees, I think it was. And then we came down here and broke open a hole and put it in, and it was 20. So we're getting a really good indicator that the fermentation's working well, and we should end up with the product that we want. The main benefit around doing something like this than what Russell was doing at the start is that he had the huge pile. And say he had 100 tonne here, by the end of the process of the decomposition of the stack over time, he's likely to end up with anywhere from 50 to 70 tonne of product, so lose anywhere between 30 and 50%. With the bokashi, you'll keep 100%, so you won't lose anything. The fermentation process, only moisture, the fermentation process will keep all of that organic matter and will pickle it rather than break it down. But because it's been in contact with a lot of microbes, once that hits the soil, then we'll get a really quick breakdown, and that can be utilised by the crop in the soil, which is what we want.
This paddock was in a grain crop wheat barley last year, and we got it harvested just before that rain came in January, and straw was all baled off, and of course we got a bit of regrowth come back and a few weeds and bits and pieces, so we sprayed it with Roundup and 10 litres of EM and then direct drilled it right at the end of February. And so there was plenty of moisture in the ground going right through the autumn, even though we had a dry autumn. And this is the result. We're starting to get a wee bit of rust in there now, but we're not too worried about that. It's kind of lost a wee bit of its colour, but if you look further down the other end, it looks quite smart. And we got invited to go in the AMP, Northern AMP Association Winter Feed Competition. Funnily enough, we won it. It was quite surprising, but it's all our own seed. We've got our own header, and this is some seed that we grew about 3 years ago. Had a silo full of it. They're Milton oats, and when we harvested it, I just blew out all the rubbish the best I could. So it was a bit left on the ground, but we didn't get it dressed or anything. So it's straight off the header in the silo through the drill, and there you go. It's a cheap crop. Yeah, so you might notice there's some hinds on another crop which is finished down there, and there's a couple of others. We've sort of got into them early because we thought, well, if we're going to get a wet winter or a snow or whatever, they deteriorate quite quickly. So we're sort of getting to the end of them now. So. But no, they've been good.
What they say it's yielding?
I think he said about 7,000 kilos. Yeah. There's some pretty good bulbs in there, and this came out of permanent pasture, and once again it was sprayed out with Roundup and EM, and it was drilled with K+, and it had a base dressing of lime and magnesium and zinc and sulphur and all those bits and pieces. Yeah, so...
the dry matter on this stuff then? Did it get tested for dry matter? Or?
Well, they just did a visual assessment and said they reckon it was about 28 tonne to hectare. Yeah. But I could be wrong. I'm no expert in that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fodder beet. Anybody's experiences with fodder beet?
Any chemicals, any herbicide, insecticide on this?
Yep. It's had 3 sprays. Yep.
So just treat it as every other crop?
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
Cloud?
It was just we sprayed off and we rotospike it, and then it was dust and rolled and then power harrowed, and that was it. Yeah.
What was the preferred source of boron?
Where's Rob?
It was organic bore.